Mark, welcome. How are you doing today?
Really good, thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to
Oh,
have
thanks.
another SEO chat.
Yeah, thank you for being on. Thank you so much for being on. I came across your profile and I thought your profile looks really, really interesting because I have this new series that I've set up called Working with SEOs, and it's essentially looking at what either SEOs or professionals outside of SEO think about SEOs. And because you have an SEO background
Okay.
and now manage lead teams and whatnot, I thought you'd be a very interesting perspective. So I want to get into also ask GPT, and also a number of questions around managing and leading a team and how SEOs can do better. But to start off with, I'd like to know you've been working with SEOs for a very long time. How long, roughly?
Yeah, good question. I'm 39 at the moment, and I put my first website on the internet at, I think I was about 14. I built something and put it live. But professionally, agency side, I've been doing SEO about 16 years. I'd say probably closer to 20 in terms of my own websites. And when I had the day that I realized, oh, hey, I'm getting traffic from search engines, how is that working? And
All
then
right.
that kind of started me on the exploration of how are they deciding who ranks number one, and yeah, what can I do?
Awesome, awesome. How do you find working with the SEO community?
Um, yeah, that's an interesting question because it's changed. It's changed. I'd say it's changed a lot over the time I've been in SEO. So when I started, the community was really small, like first name basis, I guess in the UK, small.
Hmm.
Um, I went to, I think it was the second ever Brighton SEO that got set up, and did a talk there to everyone there, which was about 25 people at the time. Obviously, really different to how it is now. And yeah, a lot of the information was kind of on personal blogs and forums like SitePoint, Digital Point. Now the community is kind of the other end of the scale, and that there's lots of people involved with SEO in house, at agencies. There are full blown courses. You've got big enterprise level companies churning out SEO guides and best practice.
Hmm.
So the community, I would say, um, is a lot more chaotic because it's bigger. And like with any community of that size, you'll get absolutely lovely people in that community who are supportive, and you'll get people who are the opposite of that.
Right.
That there's always some kind of drama going on.
Hmm.
But in all, I think, like I said, with any of those communities, if you focus your time and energy on the people that are out there supporting people, there's lots of great initiatives going on within SEO. It can be a really, really nice area to work in.
Awesome, awesome. You've been in a senior position for some a very long time. Describe what it's like managing SEOs.
Um, yeah, I guess that's a hard question for me to answer because I haven't really managed a large team of people that are not SEOs. So it's kind of all I've known. But I think um, there are particular challenges within the SEO industry, such as it does move very quickly, and a lot of the information that we use to do our jobs isn't necessarily objective, meaning that Google will provide guidelines that we can start from. But as I'm sure you know, there are lots of different ways that different people interpret the guidelines and how effective, therefore, different tactics are. So one of the many things that I focus on keeping an SEO team happy and kind of doing a good job is how can we encourage them to do their own experiments, to talk about their own theories, to get training. So I think it's perhaps even more important than some other roles that there is a kind of process for constant learning. The other thing from a selfish employer point of view is I think it's a very employee-driven market in that good SEOs are highly sought after, and you have to accept that lots of other companies and agencies will always be trying to speak to your team and steal them to go over to their team. And I think that's absolutely fine in that it's your job to understand maybe why someone would want to move, what they're not getting, whether it's money, whether it is opportunities for promotion or learning, or they want to do something different. So I think, especially in SEO, it's really important to be open to having those discussions, because there's a reason why, particularly agencies, I think, sometimes have quite a high turnover of staff. So that's something that we haven't had really as an issue. We've had people leave over the last several years, of course, but we've got a really high rate of staff sticking with us because we do, other things like we have a profit share set up for everyone at the agency. So once you pass your probation, we have a set amount of company profit that's just distributed to the team. So, if we do well, then everyone kind of does well with that.
Agency is a very interesting area because, so my background, I have both client-side agency and now now I'm a consultant. So I understand SEOs from different points of views. And I find now that agencies are being led by SEOs who came up, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. And the approach to the way they manage is, I want to say, better than it was, let's say, 10, 15 years ago. But there is still this this ability, or how can I phrase this? There is still this stigma around agency lifestyle, I should say, that agency lifestyle is very difficult, especially for SEOs, where it can be extremely challenging to appease clients. What's your take on the agency life balance?
Yeah, so I would agree, and to speak very bluntly, I think there is still the perception that agency people work overtime. I've joined agencies where in the first week when I was younger, someone said to me, "Well, no one leaves before 6." That's thought about. People think
It's
you're a
just
chair
normal,
spinner,
right?
or
Yeah.
whatever the term was. Yeah. So that's one of the reasons that we founded Candour, which was that we enjoyed working at agencies, and to be quite blunt, some of the environments I had been in personally, agency side, were quite toxic in that there was that pressure, and that you get lured in by all these nice promises, but the reality is actually something quite different. And I think that partially, not in all cases, but I think that's caused by agencies that have specific goals. For instance, if they want to sell or exit from their agency, then to do that, they need to make their company appealing in certain ways on spreadsheets in terms of, what the outgoings are in terms of staff and how much they're billing and how long the contracts are and how much new business they're winning. And it's one of the things that we set out as Candour to specifically say we do not have an intention to sell this agency. Okay, we've got other projects like we already touched on briefly earlier, like AlsoAsked. We own an e-commerce company, so things like this that can scale. But the core agency business, we wanted to make it sustainable for the staff and maintain a certain quality of life there. And what you quickly mentioned there about satisfying clients, I think is one really important thing there. So if you are struggling or you have a very high sales target, you are obviously motivated to say yes to clients that might not be a great fit. Their expectations might be quite high. This other agency said they could get results in this time frame. Can you do that? And there's that extra pressure just to say yes. One of the things, and we've grown year on year quite slowly, but very organically, is because we have said no to lots of clients where we don't think the expectation is reasonable. So we're avoiding putting our staff in the situation where, someone's got their brand new website and they're kind of expecting some results in 3 months or something like this. So sometimes it happens, but I wouldn't be prepared to gamble a relationship on it. So we work very hard to set expectations correctly at the beginning, make sure things are properly resourced. If they don't have the budget, we've had people come to us in incredibly competitive niches with just not enough budget and resource to make it happen. And, we just say this, I'm really sorry. This is like joining in a marathon race an hour late, and your plan is to run slower than everyone and then be disappointed when you don't win. So because we haven't had that specific pressure to hit a target, we have been able to focus on, the quality of life, which has helped retention, which has then helped people build skills and relationships over time. So it is a longer term kind of plan. And I think it's a better longer term plan, but you make short term less profit. You're less attractive to be bought, but then that's not an issue for us. So yeah, there's definitely that, I guess, image of agencies. And I think it's true in some cases, those agencies still absolutely exist. But it's not all cases now.
Yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. I've noticed that the more new agencies or agencies outside of the big conglomerate rise up, the better things are. Now, SEOs client side, they go through a lot of battles trying to get a budget to, let's say, hire an agency to support them. And I find that there is usually this period where they receive a strategy, let's say content strategy for organic, and they're then left with this period of time where they're trying to convince certain departments to actually implement the strategy. Because SEO, it requires more than SEOs to actually work, right? The implementation becomes an uphill battle internally. What would you say to an SEO who's client side on how to go navigate that terrain to actually have things implemented?
It's the $1 million question, right? So, in all honesty, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that because a lot of my experience is agency side. However, I have seen those challenges client side. And I think this is about, playing that politic game of understanding who the budget holders and stakeholders are that you need to convince. Being clear with your value case. So SEO is notoriously hard, obviously, to forecast because the quickest way I found to get things done internally, large companies, is to have the spreadsheet showing them how much money they're going to make when they invest. And lots of people are rightly afraid to do that with SEO because there are so many factors outside of your control, apart from the updates Google is slinging out. Even if that was static, you've got competitors that are doing things which all, affect how you will land. One thing I found that is helpful is demonstrating at least like a size of prize. So looking at what is a realistic maximum potential traffic we could reach. And then depending on your company, there's several ways you can translate that into a kind of pounds or dollars figure to at least get some attention. Say, this is the value that we haven't realized yet, that if we invest in SEO is a path that we can actually get on. And then having a kind of long-term, I guess, strategy to promote SEO internally. And there's all kinds of ways, depending on how people you're working with are themselves kind of measured on performance, that they can kind of you can get them to do SEO as part of their role. So the classic example is maybe kind of like people writing for newspapers and stuff when they realized, oh, actually, if I do this little bit of research and we optimize it, I'm essentially getting judged on how many eyeballs I'm bringing in, because that's what drives our ad revenue. And if I make sure these are optimized for the questions people are searching for, I get to, it's just kind of free money, for me, and it's going to make me look good. So I think having people understand why SEO is beneficial for them and why it's, not just another thing on their plate that's easy for them to ignore. But, it would depend company to company, but I think showing the end prize, making sure you're communicating with the right stakeholders, and then having a longer term plan to kind of be a champion for it internally. Internal training is something as well that's really helped. So with some of our larger clients, we've run a few dozen training sessions for different teams, just basically about what SEO is and how they can contribute. And once people understand it and realize it's actually sometimes not that much extra effort from what they're doing, you start to get that momentum and see change.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the psychological aspect of the way non-SEOs view SEO, because I have a theory that non-SEOs, they kind of view SEO as this dark art sort of thing, and something that's difficult to understand and not really appealing to them in the first place. And because of that, they tend to want to not, they don't want any part of it. So whenever they get requests from SEO, they like to push back rather than bring SEO in and see how they can help. And I think it's a mindset thing, but also it's the way SEOs have, it's the way SEOs present ourselves, I think. Because we tend not to have this whole idea of SEO being a dark art that comes from SEOs, right? And I think we don't do ourselves any favors by being isolated. I think what you mentioned right there with internal training, that's a big win for an SEO who's in-house or client side. Because they spend a lot of time trying to break down these barriers. And I think with just a little perspective shift, they can have a lot of people on board with SEO, both from a business level point of view and also operationally. As an example, if you have trying to convince a copywriter, right, to change what they've written for the benefit of SEO, you get pushback because that's kind of seen as a slight on their work. Copywriters, they're very skillful people, right? It's like SEOs are specialists, copywriting is as well. And SEO approaching them to sort of like change things, it's seen as a slight and immediately you get pushback. Whereas I think if you show them the benefit of SEO and how SEO can help them from their point of view as well, they're a lot more receptive, I find. So I think with agencies, definitely helping internal SEOs, client-side SEOs with those sort of things can be a big win. Have you seen an uplift in either training or workshops for client-side SEOs?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, the one of the biggest shifts I've seen over the kind of longer term is when I started doing SEO, there was basically no in-house SEOs. Everything was done by specialist agencies because it was this mysterious art. And I think some of that comes from there were lots of things historically you could do, in terms of things like link building that weren't particularly visible to a client, but did have an impact. So the SEOs will go away and do a thing. Nothing really changed on the website, but suddenly you're ranking. But definitely, we certainly do a lot more training and get more requests now. And I've really encouraged that. With clients because when we are executing a strategy, there's always going to be some kind of bottleneck or limitation on what we can do versus what we'd like to do because of resource, whether it's time or money or people. So the more that they can take in-house and execute essentially gives us more time to execute things possibly that they need a little bit more assistance in. So content is one of the first things I encourage clients to get involved with in-house, because normally they are the expert in their subject matter.
Yeah.
So we actually, as an agency, produce very, very little content ourselves. We tend to help with the content briefs, the research, and providing kind of frameworks for clients to work with, and then teaching them about things like internal linking and, bits of schema, things like that. And if we can scale that internally, that's massive for us, because if we are, not to jump ahead on topic, but if we're writing, we're being asked to write about things we're not experts in, we will end up doing research, which doesn't put us many steps away from something like ChatGPT then, in terms of we're just remixing what already exists online.
Yeah, and I think that's something a number of agencies will need to change, as in the way the services that they offer clients, because I found that historically, link building was a big win for agencies. I mean, SEO a while back was seen as link building, and I think that was partly because it was the easiest thing to want to sell as a service, and also to explain to clients, like, okay, you need SEO, you need to have links built for your site. It was very straightforward. Thank God for Penguin. That is now over. But I found that some who sold links have switched to selling content services. And I find that very interesting, because that's a pivot based off of seeing it as a way to better present results, because the end result of content is the actual content itself. Whereas when link building was the main focus, it was a case of, okay, we'll get you 6 links. Give us 30K, we'll get you 6 links, which is very poor. But anyway, we'll get you 6 links for 30K. And then clients, after a while, clients started to look at the maths of it and say, actually, we're paying this much just for 6 links. This other agency is only charging 500 per link. That's not a very good deal that you guys are offering us. So this became a very touchy subject with clients' agencies. And those who were selling links then pivoted to, actually, let's not sell links anymore, because that's a very dangerous area to play to be a part of. Let's instead sell content services, because that's the end result of that is not 6 links, it's this piece of asset. But I'm finding that workshops is probably where I think the industry is going to head to. Workshops and training.
Yeah. It's interesting. My view is that links, I think, are still super important to rank, especially if you are dealing with any kind of competitive niche. And a lot of the work we do is still, to put it in SEO terms, is around link building. And the way that's changed again over the years has been massive, because the way I do, we operate and do link building now is completely different to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, for instance, it was, or if we talked before Penguin, certainly, was essentially I just want links off vaguely relevant sites, as many as I can get, kind of shrug, because it worked so well. Now, when we talk to clients, and certainly looking at my own personal development, I came into SEO from a very kind of nerdy tech angle, knowing at the time very little about marketing. The gold standard, as in my opinion, of marketing, is about brand. So rather than someone searching for, running shoes, if they're searching for Nike running shoes, you've already won. So if you can get people at that level with your copywriting, with your t-shirts you're selling, with your training, whatever it is you can do, and you've won. So now we look a lot more at what can we create or value for clients that we can use to generate exposure and noise and get people talking about us? So a lot of the work we'll do with digital PR might be like, data collection exercises, surveying, putting together new resources, new expert stuff. So it's the content creation we do now that we get heavily involved in is very intertwined with digital PR, because there is the, what do our website visitors need? But then it's also, how do we get people talking about us, which is it's almost like the classic marketing train has caught up again with SEO.
Yeah.
So, and that's something we're having, a lot of success with. I was talking to someone today again about things, as someone that's done SEO for a long time, that I have learned that I'm doing differently to what I was doing previously. And content is one of those things which is definitely now starting with, I bang on about this a lot, but like the zero volume stuff, just because that's a result of, I feel, how Google's recent, and by recent I mean over the last 3 years, algorithms have improved their ability to understand queries and find specific pieces of content. So that, as an approach, gets a lot more kind of traffic and good traffic than it did even 5-6 years ago. So it's a really good kind of entryway, and that's changed, and that can link up with everything else. So yeah, it's interesting, like you say, seeing how the commoditized, I guess, bits of SEO have changed, because links are very dangerous things to be dealing with in that way. And I agree, content, because there is a easy to understand deliverable that lands, on you. I think that has to again be used carefully, because I think at the moment there's definite value to having very specific, what I would call basic content, which is just well targeted. I don't know how valuable that will be again in another 5 years.
You mentioned zero search volume. Tell me more about that.
Sure. So historically, the kind of approach to keyword research has been, you use a keyword research tool, it pumps out a lot of things you could potentially rank for, you pick the kind of sensible ones that are within reach, and then you take into account and put quite a lot of your forecasting effort into what it says the monthly search volume of this is. And that was kind of how keyword research was done for quite a long while. And then I think as searcher behavior changed, as the technology changed, so things like just even basic things like being able to do a search with voice, I think you're much more likely to have longer search queries when you can speak them rather than type them, to give one specific example. I think the search landscape has shifted massively. We know for a fact that a lot of the data we get from keyword research tools is very rough or just wrong. I think it was Ahrefs that said for the keywords in their database that they know about, it was around 90% have 20 searches a month or less. And when you look at the type of results Google gives, an example I just always use is if you Google something like buy blue running shoes, you can retype that same query in maybe 50 different ways, and it means the same thing. So you could be like, buy blue running shoes UK, buy blue running shoes online. They all mean pretty much the same thing. So actually the intent volume for that search is kind of a sum of all of the different ways you can type that query. So while that query itself might not look attractive in a keyword search tool that says, oh, it's got 0 searches a month, you will see lots of cases, if you go and look for them, where people have been like, oh, hey, this tool said this has 0 searches a month, and I published an article on it, and I'm getting 200 visitors a month. I did a talk at Brighton SEO last year now on this, and I gave a range of examples from my own personal blog, which has not got many links, and I put short bits of content on, and they've got a few hundred visitors a month where it says it's all 0, up to the spam sites that were solely targeting things that had 0 volume, and they were getting in 12 to 16 weeks 1 million, 2 million visitors a month, because they're just scraping up all of these really specific searches. And I think that's because Google's transitioned more from It's always less reliant now on the link graph because it has a better understanding of the question. So if you had a really specific question, historically, Google may have gone like, well, I don't quite get what you're asking. I understand the topic and roughly what you're asking. So here's some authoritative sites that I know talk about this. I think they've got the answer. Whereas now, because of updates like BERT, they can be like, okay, I understand exactly the context of what you're asking there. And there's actually this little website here that answers exactly the question that you're answering. So I'm going to match you up. I think that's a trend that we've seen for better and worse, because there's definitely been a spike in spam now that I think Google's operating this way.
Oh, it's I think we can speak so much around keywords because I am also of the same opinion. That's why when you said it sort of like pricked my ear, and I was like, I want to hear more about that, because ever since Keyword Planner changed from keyword tool to Keyword Planner, I started to see the very, very long-term vision of what I thought Google was going to do, which is pretty much I had a theory that they are trying to move marketers away from the whole aspect of keywords, links, and to some extent rankings, because all of that ties into keyword and it ties heavily into spam and manipulation, and that's something that they were trying to very quickly get away from. And I think in a number of years, more and more SEOs are going to be relying less on the if you like the traditional way of doing keyword research, because they'll see it as it's very reactive and not a proactive way for an SEO to be an efficient SEO, in my opinion. But that leads us nicely into AlsoAsked. Tell me about this. It's a brilliant tool, by the way.
Thank you. So, okay, AlsoAsked is a people also ask research tool. And we were using something similar to AlsoAsked internally for quite a few years. And because I started getting interested in this, so this is, for those that don't know, when you do a query in Google, around about 50% of the time, you will get a little box, normally kind of under the first or second result, that says people also ask, and it will give you normally 4 questions that are related to what you've typed into Google. Why this interested me so much was that you're essentially getting what Google thinks back in a mirror, in that from Google, you are getting this information that says, when someone asks me this question, the likely next questions they're going to ask are these things. So you could know very little about SEO. And if I said to you, there's one page that answers this question, and there is one page that answers this question, and the next 4 most likely questions, which do you think's on a probability kind of factor going to be more helpful for someone? It's a pretty obvious choice that it's that one, right?
Yeah.
And there's all these really interesting things about people also ask data, such as the questions that appear in people also ask are not necessarily the questions on the website that Google is giving you the answer from. It's because Google has decided that that website answers that question, which is just coming from what people type into their search engine. So this level of data, this level of, I call it intent proximity. So if someone wants to know a thing, there's obviously different paths. Because that's the other thing about intent, is that it's not objective, in that people can type the same thing into Google but want to know different things, and those people themselves have different levels of understanding. So it's all like a probability tree, if that's all you know. So people also ask data gives you this probability tree, which is super helpful from an SEO point of view. If that you're trying to align, if you're trying to align yourself with Google, which I think is a good long-term strategy, unless you want to be squashed by something like Penguin. Google's always saying about being helpful to users, right? So this is a keystone for me, like a cornerstone of how you can do that. If you're trying to understand your service product area, your brand in a lot of cases, your competitors, your customers' pain points. This is also a trove of information, because you take any of those key phrases from people also ask, I'll give you like a 90% of the time, they will be zero search volume, right? But they're obviously significant enough to be included on the SERP. So to me, it's one of the most valuable pieces of information at an article level. So we use other tools. We've always used other tools for kind of topic idea generation. What do we want these categories to be about? What should we write about? But when it comes down to, okay, I'm writing something about this, PAA data is where I focus a lot of my work. So we built an internal tool. We put an alpha up of AlsoAsked, which essentially allows you to put in a keyword. It will live go to Google. It will do that search. It will mine the results by default to the first two levels, because if you click on the questions, they kind of concertina out to other questions. And it'll allow you to download that as an image or a spreadsheet. And there are other kind of extensions that you can get, and some of the tools that will do this for free online, like Phrase is one, Search Response is another. And the difference between them and AlsoAsked is that we actually simulate clicking on the results, whereas a lot of these other, well, all the other tools actually will essentially re-Google the keyword. And the difference between these two approaches is actually quite profound. So firstly, if you simulate clicking on the results, your end graph is normally about 20-25% bigger, so you get more questions back. But what's fascinating to me is that if you do a search and then click on the questions to open up the next set of questions, they are different than if you re-Google the next question. And I believe that's because the actual intent of people slightly shifts depending on the root query, because that is a kind of fingerprint for their current level of understanding and where they might be in a buyer journey. So I think we've got a really nice approach. You can do it by language, by region, without like messing around with VPNs. We've made a way that you can upload 1,000 queries at once, which will get you about 25,000 questions back. So you can look at, if you want to do this at scale with a tool like Keyword Insights and like start clustering, you can do that as well. But that's a service we launched. I've been absolutely amazed by the kind of reception and feedback from the community. We ran it for free as a kind of alpha and then beta test. Had to take it down because it got horrendously expensive to run, because obviously it does use like proxy services and stuff like this. So to continue it, we did launch a paid version. We've recently made the free version kind of bigger, so you can do, it's like 90 searches a month now for free. And if you kind of want more than that, or you want different features, there's subscriptions as well.
Yeah, like I said, it's a brilliant tool. What I love about it is that it puts marketers, SEOs, in the mindset of their prospect targeting, their targeted prospects. Because I find that when you have stuff like keywords planner, it's very by the numbers type of optimization. And I don't know about you, but whenever I look at a site, or even when I just Google a phrase, the SEO of the phrase just sort of like pops out at me, and it's like, oh, come on, you can tell that this site has SEOs working on it, and it's very annoying because it doesn't feel organic anymore. Whereas when you have, because everyone's trying to hit those, they're trying to maximize on those search demand, right? Whereas when you have stuff that doesn't necessarily show or lend itself to people focusing on search demand, it gets them instead thinking about their targeted users. And that, I think, is an important area for SEOs to realign themselves to.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's something as well I've seen Google doing less of, which is if you type in certain queries, historically you would basically see, the exact title tag matching the query a lot of the time, because Google's found that, and it's like because it's getting a little bit better at intent. There's lots of examples again where you type queries and that it's almost not worded like that on the page anywhere, but Google's still got the idea. But yeah, a lot of the kind of other keyword tools are keyword centric rather than intent centric, meaning, if you search for whatever the phrase is, you'll essentially just get a list of every key possible kind of phrase that includes that, even though the intent might be completely different. So yeah, that's the other reason why I really like this kind of data, and completely think you're right. I think the long-term strategy is to align yourself again with the customer, with their search process, rather than just trying to match keywords people are searching for.
Yeah. And from a business leadership point of view, if business leaders are concerned with not seeing numbers anymore, the focus, I've said this for a very long time, the focus for SEOs should always be on reporting on pages. The pages are the assets, not the keywords. You can have keywords within pages if you want to show how that's performing. But if you can get business leaders to think of pages being assets, that I think is actually a better way of presenting SEO value to business leadership, because one, it's still quite rare. I know a number of people who have started to focus more on pages, but it's still quite rare across the industry. But it's very valuable. To me, it's and in my opinion, a lot better.
I saw a quite well-known SEO called Chris Green, who published a really nice, what he called the SEO,
Metrics
I think
chain.
he called it the SEO metric chain. Yeah. And I
Yeah.
really liked that, how it starts at one end with the kind of technical indexing and goes through to ranking visibility all the way through to kind of sessions and organic. And I think reporting and metrics is really, in fairness to everyone, a very complex area for what people want, what they think they want, what's useful, what metrics you have actual control over, which ones you don't. And like you say, where value actually is, because if you create something that drives, say, no organic traffic, let's put the worst possible case scenario, you've planned out some content based on, some research you've done, and it provides no organic traffic, it should still provide value to the users on the website, because it's there for a reason. So I do sometimes think that gets missed in the pursuit of SEO, of crossing that line that Google's laid out of why are you creating this? Is it for search engines to get traffic, or is there a reason, like a human reason you're making this? And if there's a human reason, that should really be central. And then the SEO is kind of how you present it and exactly kind of the trimmings. I always say the same about performance and core web vitals, because core web vitals kind of, a huge deal got made of that in the SEO community. And then there became all the arguments of, well, we improved our core web vitals and, we didn't see any uplift in SEO traffic. And it's like, fine. But, it's well documented that slow websites that kind of jump around when you load them really annoy people. So the primary focus of core web vitals should be, we're making our visitors happier, they're getting a better experience. And the bonus prize is, yes, it might help us with rankings. So I think there's still that, and it's why I hate the term SEO content.
Yes.
And I always ask people, what do you mean by that? It's like, this is content for humans, but the way we're researching it is actually, again, it's a human way. If we're looking at, say, people also ask data, it's not a search engine thing. It's like we're understanding the people and what they're typing in and what their questions, worries, fears, objections are. So yeah, there's a whole, like you said, there's a whole layer of psychology that goes on top of metrics and expectation that can make our jobs challenging.
Yeah. Stick with optimizing for users. That's the advice I always give to SEOs, especially those coming up, because in the age that we're moving into, where AI is pretty much going to be, at this point, it seems it's going to be inevitable. There's going to be a need to separate AI-based work versus work that's good marketing. I mean, just it's just basic good marketing without trying to cheat. GPT is making the rounds. I personally don't think it's ChatGPT is specifically going to be the AI that dominates, but it is one that's leading into the AI, if you like, revolution. What are your thoughts on AI and ChatGPT specifically?
So my thoughts on AI in general are that it is inevitable because technology progresses at whatever rate you want to take it. It rarely goes backwards, and it's rarely going to continue to move backwards unless there's some kind of horrible global event, in which case it won't matter. So by that logic, AI and a general kind of purpose AI is inevitable on some kind of time scale. I've read a lot kind of about this in terms of experts and their predictions on how long that's going to take, and they vary from kind of 5 to 100 years. But even some of the most conservative people are just pushing it at nearer 100 years, which isn't that far away still, in my opinion, in terms of how big a change that could bring. It's been interesting watching Google handle the various questions in terms of policy around AI content, because we've had like news sites and stuff using, I don't know if AI is the right term in this context, but robotic content certainly for many years.
Right.
So reporting on things like, earthquakes where they have the data linked up already to machines, things like breaking news stories where you get the first couple of paragraphs and the headline, X.X earthquake recorded in such and such at such time. All of that can be generated, and it can be published in a few seconds without oversight. And as when it comes to like news SEO, being first to publish is, it's a massive benefit, it's a massive kind of advantage. And from a user point of view, I think that's brilliant. I would much prefer to know about it instantly and then a human go and kind of, write a story about it and update it. And that seems to be the current policy of Google is, and I saw Danny Sullivan tweeting about this, I think it was today or yesterday, saying, we haven't said AI content is bad. We have said do not use it or any method outside of AI to create content just for search engines, which I think is an incredibly unhelpful answer. And the reason I think it's an incredibly unhelpful answer is that programs like ChatGPT, if you just say, write an article about whatever it is and it generates something, you've probably seen there are free detectors online that you can paste it into and they can say 99.9% sure this is AI written. And then other people say, well, AI content's going to continue to improve, so it won't be detectable, which I don't agree with, because the goal of like ChatGPT isn't to be non-detectable. The reason it is detectable is because it writes so well. So it doesn't need to improve in that way. That the sentence structure it uses, the way it delivers things, you can even tell it to write in specific styles, is very good. Like, I would say much better than the average. If you picked an average human and told them to write something and gave them much longer, it's better. And it comes down to that, engram like probability of why it is detectable, because it's using very, kind of a predictable set of tokens to generate that text, right? So we can find that. So at what stage does that become helpful for a user or not? So without waffling too far about this, in terms of the future of SEO, I don't think 100% AI generated content for things like answers is going to be a thing you can rank for. And the reason for that is, if you ask ChatGPT to answer a question or write some content for you, that question, that intent that you're asking is objectively solved because it can give you the correct good answer. It's solved. So my question would be, why would Google ever want to have your pre-written, pre-baked content ranking there when it itself, with a, I would argue, probably bigger, better, badder data set, just generate that answer itself? From an economics level, you're buying access to that system, or we will be, because it's not going to be free forever, at a markup. So it's never going to be as economically viable for you to generate things with AI, pay to have someone, you know, check it, publish it, whatever, and put it online, as it is for Google to just generate it. I don't think it's happening now for a whole myriad of reasons in terms of why is Google not doing this. The cost of generating an answer through like a large language model like ChatGPT is, I've seen estimates at 10 to 100 times more expensive per query than returning like a pre-baked index page and letting people go off to websites. That, I don't know how accurate those are, but I would gamble a lot of money. It's a lot more expensive to do that. So there's an expense cost there. You know, there's a difference between 1 million people playing around with ChatGPT versus serving however many billions of searches a day. I also think there is a safety net for Google of returning like 10 possible results, because as we said earlier, intent is not objective. It can mean, people can mean different things. And you see this in search results where Google sometimes, it understands that 80% of people will be looking for this, 20% be looking for this. So it might show you two different types of website. You know, classic examples are, does it show e-com sites or informational sites when you're searching about a product? I don't know. You have to reviews, or do you want to buy it now?
Yeah.
Google sometimes embarrasses itself with featured snippets because it gets the answers very wrong. So I think there's all kinds of risks for Google deploying that technology. I think there's going to be a short window where AI content could be very successful. We've just seen, I think it was bankrate.com, not a site I'm aware of, but apparently a big finance site has been publishing AI content. CNET, which I do know better, I think just published 70 articles very quietly under AI, and they appear to be ranking and driving traffic. Again, I can't see that sticking long term. But certainly AI is going to have an impact and change how we work. We use it internally to help with content now. So it can be brilliant at inspiration, at generating outlines, at giving you that different perspective. But again, if Google can answer that question as well, so if you generated something with an AI and then Google kind of sees the query, it's indexing or it indexes your content, and then as kind of one of its checks, it's like, can our knowledge graph or can our large language model give the answer you have? If the answer is yes, then you haven't provided anything additional to kind of the solved question, if you like, which is why I think they've been leaning quite heavily recently into this experience on top of expertise. So if you've written about something and their LLM looks and it's like, oh, well, it seems to actually have this kind of information, which I've never really seen before, that might be these next steps that we need to take. Again, I'd like to caveat all of this while I've just kind of given you a monologue about that. You know, AI machine learning isn't my expert topic. And just because I'm acutely aware, just because I don't know how something is possible certainly does not mean it is not possible. So I'm very open to how things might progress. I'm basing my decisions, like as an agency, as a service provider, as someone involved in the industry, just based on a few axioms about what I know about how it can work economically, and just thinking about Google's strategy and what they want, because however the chips currently are, they will align to, you know, in Google's terms, to what's going to fit them. So I think that's the safe bet to align myself to.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think with Google looking at, I do think it's the biggest threat that Google is going to face, especially with Bing now looking to somehow incorporate that. I think that might somehow force Google's hand to do something about it.
Yeah.
but it's just an algorithm away. CNET might be laughing all the way to the bank with AI content now, but one algorithm just like that can change, wipe the slate clean. And I think if anyone is going to succeed first for the long term with AI, it's most likely going to be Google. They are pretty much the only ones aligned to succeed with it. And from what I've seen, the way they're aligning, they want to focus more on users. And I don't think something like PT rather, is a big business threat to them. I just see it as something that's going to force them to speed up whatever they have planned from an AI point of view. Although there are some number of SEOs speculating that it's going to kill Google, it's going to kill SEOs. It's like, oh, SEO is dead type of articles. It's like, enough, stop.
Yeah.
It's like, those are the type of speculations I'm not so keen on, because it's not really based on much. It's just literally out of thin air, and it's like scaremongering almost, which is a
I
shame.
think, I think it's pretty naive to think Google hasn't been, deeply involved in looking at AI for a long time. It's not like they've suddenly gone, oh, wow. We saw, I think it was 4 years ago, Google demonstrated the duplex where they had it make the phone call to book a hair appointment. And this was having a full-on conversation with voice recognition with someone to a chat GPT level. Nothing got pushed out. I think that project got canned. They've now got Lambda, but Google's had LLMs for years. And the thing Google has that chat GPT doesn't have is a knowledge graph. Google's knowledge graph is hugely powerful. The biggest, you see lots of examples of people posting stuff that chat GPT will output where it will directly contradict itself between sentences. The example I used was like, that I saw that I show people is if you ask it what the fastest marine mammal is, it will tell you the fastest marine mammal that swims is a sailfish. And then you say to it, is a sailfish a mammal? And it's like, no. And it's like, so, then you get an insight into, oh, it's just stringing words together that kind of sound correct. It hasn't got a knowledge graph that says this is this thing, this is its relationship to here to build on. So this is the biggest advantage I think Google has, which is they have kind of a exploitable knowledge graph of understanding of things, their connections that they can then use as like a data set for a large or for like a conversational model, if you like, to dip into almost as like a brain. Because to me, to put it in very simple terms, it's like Chat GPT for me is just a really smooth talking kind of con artist that knows some stuff and will just make everything else up, but sounds really convincing. And I agree 100% with what you say. Yeah, agree 100% with what you say about it speeding Google up, because I think Google's worry is, when you're making $200 billion a year through, primary search ads, how on earth do you integrate AI without really disrupting that business model that's generating 90% of your revenue? So that's a big question they've probably not wanted to answer as long as possible.
Yeah. Now, how are we for time? Okay, so I just have two more questions. I'll pose them to you very quickly with to do with hiring SEOs. So hard skills and soft skills from an SEO point of view. Let's say a client-facing SEO. What are the hard and soft skills you look for when hiring an SEO?
That's a really interesting question. So it will depend on the role, firstly. So obviously we have kind of like technical. Generally, we will hire for technical roles, content roles, and digital PR roles. The kind of soft and hard skills that those roles lend themselves to generally, we'll see, like for instance, it's quite common like web developers maybe become technical SEOs. It's quite common people that previously did copywriting might get into the kind of the content and research side. Now, in terms of hard and soft skills and how we hire, I'm kind of more interested in how kind of curious people are and what they've learned already themselves, because I can teach, we have an established training program. We have a training partner for soft skills. We send people on, confidence courses, presentation courses, negotiation, all those things they might need for clients, and build them up and get them to practice. Hard skills, we've got our own technical SEO course that we also sell externally. We've put people through. We have our own kind of sites here. So what's important to me is that someone can come and talk to me about search engines and show me they're curious. Because I think, as I said right at the beginning, when we talked about training and opportunities and development, the thing I see with good SEOs is that they prioritize in terms of what makes them happy and fulfilled. Like knowledge is something that's really central to them. So they love learning and understanding how things work. And we've had some exceptional SEOs. I've hired some exceptional SEOs over the years that have come from the weirdest kind of unrelated backgrounds, and they've turned out to be absolutely, fantastic with the way they think about things and the speed they pick up skills. So, of course, you can list, if you're client facing, of course, like, good communication skills is like, pretty, it sounds pretty obvious. We have account managers and strategists here, and we tend to kind of bundle people up with complementary skills when they're going into certain meetings, because, everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. This is a luxury I have as well, being a small agency. So we're only like 24 people. So our hiring is fairly rare, and we're not conducting dozens and dozens of interviews. So while we have a kind of process, it's not overly formal in terms of, we're looking specifically for this skill. We have played around with doing things like general aptitude testing before, which I thought might be helpful. And now I have doubts, just because there's lots of people I know that work in SEO who wouldn't identify as neurotypical, for instance, that wouldn't perform so well on such tests, but again, make absolutely fantastic SEOs. So again, I don't know if that's a helpful answer, in that I just don't approach it in that way. I'm much more interested in, show me the WordPress site you built, and talk to me about what you did. And, I don't mind if you come to the interview and you tell me that you think Facebook likes help Google rankings, as long as you can give me a compelling reason why you think that, rather than I just read it on a blog. They're the kind of people I think that really, they go off and they work day to day. And, we have kind of internal meetings where we talk about different things Google's doing, and everyone's bringing in something else new every week that they've discovered, they thought they've learned, and that's, I think, what makes a really, really strong team.
Yeah, I agree. Showing by doing, I think, is what a good SEO does, because SEO attracts a mindset that's very curious. The discoverability of things is what leads to, I think, great SEOs. But that's just my personal opinion. Lastly,
100%.
Mark, it being the start of the year, what are you looking forward to this year from a business point of view?
From a business point of view, I think for me, it will be to do with AlsoAsked. So we launched in March last year. So we're coming up to, it seems longer, but our 1-year anniversary. And one big thing we've got kind of planned for that quarter is the release of our API. So I'm really excited about that, because we're going to be, as far as I'm aware, the only place that you can get a live API to people AlsoAsked data. And I've got quite a few ideas about how we can work with the community there to build sort of some open source scripts and connectors to various tool sets people are using. So I'm looking forward to that. I guess I'm looking forward to seeing where the AI stuff goes. I think I feel a little bit, I'm trying to let go of any apprehension I feel, because I think that can cloud your decision making, by being like a denier almost. I think there's going to be big changes that happen, and I think you have to roll with the changes basically. So I'm keen to just see how the next stage is going to play out, because I feel we're on the precipice now of something changing, because we've got GPT-4 as well, I think due not long out, which is, I think if I remember rightly, like the data it's been trained on, it's essentially 1,000 times bigger. So I'm very interested to see what can come from that. And I'd say lastly, I feel I'm kind of in the place now where people are starting to more regularly get out and to events. I'll say post lockdown rather than post COVID. But I went to Brighton SEO last year. It was super busy. It was still very COVID-y. Like we were still in like a wave of COVID, obviously. And I feel at least we're a little bit back to how things were before, although not quite. So I guess I'm just looking forward to seeing more kind of my peers and colleagues again, rather than just kind of Zoom calls.
Yeah, back to normality, hopefully.
Yeah, or as
Brilliant.
close as we get the new normal.
Yeah, it's that term. Mark, thank you so much for your time. I'll have this up and ping you. But thank you so much. Have a great weekend, and we'll catch up again soon.